All right. Good morning, everyone. If I could have your attention, we'll go ahead and get started. Uh, we're going to come out of recess of this special general council to vote on these ballot measures. And before we jump straight into our next amendment, I think we should open up in prayer. So if we could, Miss Gracie has been so kind to offer the blessing this morning. So please, let's give her some attention.
Entate, Gunagay. We were thankful to you for what you have given to us. You've given us life. You've given us this new day. But you have given us earth. You have given us the sky. And you have given us water. We are gathered together, and we ask that you join us as we look forward for your O-gah-pah people. We come and we're gathered together, and I ask that you be with each one of us. For those of us who did the planning for the meeting, getting it prepared, and also to thank the staff here at Downstream for furnishing food for us. We're in day 2 of the special meeting of the General Council. We're discussing amendments to the governing resolution, which again will lead towards a constitution. We ask that you be with the folks who cannot be here with us. We're thinking of all of our families, those at home too. But Father, as we are gathered together, we look to you as we always should. We want to follow your ways. And with that, again, we ask that you be with us with our deliberations as we again look towards the future of your O-gah-pah people. And we ask for safe journeys home for those who have come again. Gunagay. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Gracie. So before I kick it back to Roman for this next amendment, I'd like to turn it over to Linda, our election chair, so we can go over and she can remind us some of the processes that we have.
Ahoy, good morning, everyone. Welcome back. If you could just quickly look at your voting device. First of all, did everybody get registered and get a voting device? Okay, just to make sure, just a friendly reminder, in the bottom right corner is the power button, power up. And then once it is on, once again, if you'll press in the left lower button that says link to ensure that you are on channel 2 or channel 9. If you're not on either of those channels, please proceed back to registration, return your voting device, and they will reissue another one to you that is on the correct channel. Everyone good to go with that? Perfect. Thank you, Chairman Byrd.
Thank you. Thank you, Linda. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to you, Roman.
I'd just like to reread where we left off yesterday with Amendment 14 that has already been voted on. So we're not voting on this. This is just a refresher. The language in 14 reads, by majority vote shall the Quapaw Indian Council rename Section 6 to 6.1 and establish Section 6.2 to provide an ethics commission shall be established and be comprised of 5 Quapaw Nation members who shall be elected by nomination from the floor at the next Quapaw Indian Council and shall not include any member of the business or grievance committees. And my apologies, this isn't the updated one. An ethics commission shall be established and be comprised of 5 Quapaw Nation members who shall be elected by nomination from the floor at the next Quapaw Indian Council and shall not include any member of the business or grievance committees or employees of the nation or its entities. 3 members will be elected to serve a 2-year term and 2 members will be elected to serve a 3-year term. The 2 members receiving the most votes in the initial vote will be the 2 serving the 3-year term. So that brings us to item 15, or Amendment 15. Mr. Chair, I move to accept the language for Amendment 15, which states, by majority vote shall the Quapaw Indian Council adopt a code of ethics to be administered by the Ethics Commission and amend the governing resolution to add subsection 6.2 B, C, and D to provide the Ethics Commission shall prepare a code of ethics to be approved by the Quapaw Indian Council at the next Quapaw Indian Council meeting after enactment of this provision, so Quapaw Nation members can have confidence in their elected and appointed officials. The Code of Ethics must contain provisions for conflicts of interest, procurement, illicit and prohibited conduct, abuse of power, retaliation, gifts received, undue influence, violation of the Ethics Code, and penalties. Ethics Commission procedures for complaints, resolve exceptions, and confidential information. The Ethics Commission will have the authority to amend or change the Code of Ethics subject to approval by the Quapaw Indian Council.
I accept your motion.
Second the motion.
I have a second. Now we'll move into discussion and debate on this amendment.
I make a motion that we bring item E from previous amendments that says to add grievance committee members shall adhere to the Quapaw Nation Code of Ethics.
So that
Can you restate that?
Grievance committee members shall adhere to the Quapaw Nation Code of Ethics. Make an item E
Okay. And
or D.
can we save the motion for additional discussion?
Yes.
Or would you like? Okay. So Virginia is asking that we add another item, E, which says the grievance committee shall adhere to the Code of Ethics.
I also want to strike. I want to take from Amendment 11, H, and add a F that says the grievance committee members shall seek assistance of or work with the Ethics Commissions as it deems necessary. And I want to strike that from Amendment 11 and move it here.
Okay, so yesterday, from item 11, we struck item H. The grievance committee may seek the assistance of or work with the Ethics Commission as it deems necessary. And what Virginia is asking is that we now place that under this item, which would be item F.
And just so I'm clear, as well as everyone else in the room, you're suggesting to include 10, as it's written in our booklets, 10E and 11H. Is that correct? Okay, thank you.
This is Barbara Kaiser Collier. Virginia brings up a very good point, but I'm wondering, and I don't know about, I'm not trying to get into number 11 at all, but why would we not want all committees to work with the Ethics Committee? Why would not all of the tribal committees fall under the same scenario? Could you make it across the board committees instead of just the grievance committee?
I'd be fine with that.
Go ahead and recognize our parliamentarian here.
So if I understand, the intent of the Code of Ethics would be to govern not just the grievance committee, correct? So just as for your information, the inclusion of one body is read as the exclusion of all others. So if there was an amendment E where it says that the grievance committee shall adhere to the Code of Ethics, that would read to, because you're not including any other body, mentioning any other body, it would almost be an exclusion of the business committee of any other elected or appointed officials. So I just want to point that out. If the intent is that this Code of Ethics and this Ethic Commission have authority over more than just the grievance committee, it almost reads as only the grievance committee shall adhere to those and be subject to those rules, just for your information.
So then I want to add the other committees on that line. The business committee, the grievance committee, all committees.
The intent behind this, just so everybody knows, is, and it's not expressed in this, is that the grievance committee is still the body responsible for complaints and grievances over the business committee, and that's it. The Ethics Commission would pick up those complaints against appointed officials, directors, and such. The Ethics Commission would also potentially, so we started writing, we started with a code of ethics to include in this, and it is far too big of a document for this committee to take on, which is why we're including that should be written here. But in that document that was started, and there's the potential for it to change, is that all committees would be subject to, all elected officials and committees would be answerable to the code of ethics. So, I mean, I just wanted everybody to know that that was the original intent.
I get that that's the intent, but have you met the Quapaw people? I think what he just said, where we need to include those committees, because, I mean, Roman, come on.
I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just letting everybody know that this was, what you're saying was the original intent of what we're doing here. I'm just stating that we don't have a code of ethics written, but that's, but in the document that we did begin, that it is pretty clear in that, and I wish that we could have it done, but that's what we're asking them to do, is to complete it.
I still want them included.
If that was the intent, then make it back that way.
Agreed.
Any other discussion?
I have one thing. This is Linda Valier. Can we reword C to be actually a proper sentence structure? It's confusing the way it's written now.
Yes, absolutely. Let me see if I can reword that right now.
I think if the list, the and in front of penalties needs to be removed, and the word resolve should be resolutions, unless that's intended to be two separate sentences. But I read this as it's the list of what needs to be included in the code of ethics.
By changing resolve to resolution, because we thought about that also, our discussion around it was whether that could be construed as the Ethics Commission having the ability to create resolution.
Then what did you mean by resolve?
Another word for resolution. So there's the difference between resolution from a governing aspect and what's the resolution of as in a result, could be taken out of context if we're using the same language. Asking for the resolution or the resolve, I think, speaks more to the resolution or the result of something. We're open to suggestions if there's wording that you think that makes that cleaner. Matters.
So a provision
We
for
could
a resolve?
say resolving matters. That makes the point, I think, clear. For resolving conflicts or matters.
I think that looks better.
I'd like to make a change to D also in reading it right now. It speaks as if the Quapaw Indian Council can give the Ethics Commission authority to make changes whenever they want. And we want it to be a little clearer, or I'd like it to be a little clearer. The Ethics Commission will have the authority to amend or change the Code of Ethics, and instead of saying subject to approval by the Quapaw Indian Council, I'd like to say all changes must be approved by the Quapaw Indian Council.
I think you should include shall in there too. Amend instead of change. Because things tend to have to get heated up at General Council. We'll call somebody. Check. Okay. We'll check with somebody.
Barbara and Virginia, would you be willing to add on to all committees and say that all committees and any appointed official?
since it's Virginia's motion, I resolved to her. I have no problem with it.
Can we, suggestion here just to, section F, to clarify the it and who that specifically is in reference to, whether that's committees or the ethics committee.
Okay, so what we made adjustment to was item E, and we changed the language to remove or, but to make it more inclusive and say all committees, elected and appointed officials shall adhere to the code of ethics.
This is Linda Valier. On F, just to clarify, all committees shall seek the assistance or work with the Ethics Commission as the Ethics Commission deems necessary? Or should it be as the specific committee that's seeking assistance deems necessary?
You're correct.
Okay.
This is Tyler in the back as well. I've just got a quick question from Kelly on Zoom. Will the code apply to all leadership positions within the tribal businesses or
Yes.
just tribal committees?
All of them, Kelly.
Yes, the intent is for all elected officials be subject to the code of ethics.
Anybody else? Any other discussion?
Without
Call for the
any other
question.
discussion,
Roman,
yes.
I wonder if your committee might consider alternate wording to, I can't see now where it is, but it says all changes shall be approved by the Quapaw Indian Council. They may or may not be approved. I wonder if a better wording would be all changes are subject to approval by the council or something similar to that. Well, that's in D.
Yes, that would be a may.
Does that address your concern, Cookie?
Yeah, unless you've got a better one.
Yeah, thank you.
That's, yeah, that was the point right there. I have another question. Where it says that,
Just a second.
oh, okay.
Virginia, are you agreeable with that change?
Who?
Virginia.
Because we're still on, this is Virginia's motion.
Oh,
Callie Bowden. I've just got one suggestion to look at there. It says all committees shall seek the assistance or work with the Ethics Commission as the individual committee deems necessary. Can we possibly change that to may instead of making it shall so it's not so definitive?
So we just removed, it said seek the assistance or work, and we believe that to be a redundant statement. So change may seek the assistance of the Ethics Commission.
So it's basically the original language.
Cookie, did you have any more remarks?
well, I wanted to ask Roman if your committee had considered in section B, setting a period of time as to when the council might consider accepting the ethics code, because it could be a year before they meet again. Otherwise,
Callie Bowden, just one more suggestion on changing the code of ethics. If we could, and it's farther down on the paper, I know you're working on this, but change it to where it is more, it's stronger language for general counsel shall. They must approve it, not leave it in the ethics committees or commission's hands, but it must be approved by general counsel. It says subject to, and I'm just asking if we can strengthen the language on that.
So we're waffling back and forth on the language, I think, and perhaps this particular statement might be better separated from it, because on one hand we're saying that it may be approved or subject to approval, meaning that general counsel does not have to approve the changes that they make, and then on the other hand shall approve, saying that anything presented to general council has to approve that, right? So I think we're I know I think you mean the same thing, but we just need to find a cleaner way to get to that same statement. Let's just go, yeah, let's go from the top on that. Okay, I'm just going to reread this with the potential language changes. It says B, the Ethics Commission shall prepare a code of ethics to be approved by the Quapaw Indian Council at the next Quapaw Indian Council meeting after enactment of the position. No, that's not the original. So I'm going to read these again. B is to say the Ethics Commission shall prepare a code of ethics to be approved by the Quapaw Indian Council. After the initial election of the Ethics Commission, the Code of Ethics shall be prepared by the next meeting of the Quapaw Indian Council or at a special meeting of the Quapaw Indian Council. Can you scroll up? The Code of Ethics must contain provisions. The Code of Ethics shall contain provisions for conflicts of interest, procurement, illicit and prohibited conduct, abuse of power, retaliation, gifts received, undue influence, violation of the ethics code and penalties, ethics commission procedures for complaints, resolving conflicts or matters, exceptions, and confidential information. The Ethics Commission shall have the authority to amend the Code of Ethics. Amendments to the Code of Ethics are effective upon approval by the Quapaw Indian Council. All committees, elected and appointed officials shall adhere to the Code of Ethics. All committees may seek the assistance of the Ethics Commission as the individual committee deems necessary.
I have a question. On all committees may seek the assistance. Oh, this is column mouse. It says all committees may seek the assistance of Ethics Commission as the individual committee deems necessary. Is there a way we can word it as in maybe an individual, as not just a committee, but individuals have the right to ask? I don't know where I'm going with this, but I mean, the way it's worded, it just reads that committees are the only ones who can seek the assistance of the ethics committee. Can an individual that is not a part of a said committee?
Roman, this is Barbara Kaiser Collier.
Hi,
I have a
Barbara.
question.
Yes.
Are all of the employees and departments and enterprises going to be under this same code of ethics?
That would be nice, but that's ultimately up for general counsel to decide as that policy gets created.
So it will be a separate policy for committees versus enterprises and businesses and departments?
I would believe so, just because our governing document can't compel an employee of Downstream, for example, to adhere to our resolution, but they would have, but that entity, we could compel the entity to. So it would, it would be two, right? One, the entity has to have their own.
Well, okay, so I think what this is attempting to do, to answer your question, is the political process. I don't think that this is an employment matter, is what this is attempting to handle. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think this is for the political conduct rather than employment conduct, is what this Code of Ethics and Ethics Commission is about. Now, the business units, they probably have their own ethics policies. I don't know.
Yes. We do want to have recourse from an employment standpoint and protect our employees so that they do have some place to go that is not the business committee. And this ethics commission is meant to fill that, relieve the business committee of that responsibility. So yes, this is reaching into the employment aspect of things for tribal employees. But what it doesn't cover, and I don't know if we even have the authority to cover, is non-tribal employees in that matter.
This is Virginia Mouse. Wouldn't that be covered under that portion where it says those individuals with complaints? Would that not encompass everybody, not just specify tribal, non-tribal? Or do you have to specify? Or do we have to, I guess?
We were just discussing this. I think it's better to specify. The request as presented isn't to specify that it should be tribal or non-tribal or who that covers, because it potentially opens the door for Jimmy at Waste Management in Joplin to bring up complaint, right? Well, if Jimmy at Waste Management in Joplin knows something is running amok, then should he be allowed to say something?
If a contractor knows of some unethical behavior, whether they are Quapaw or not, the question is, do you want to know?
Absolutely. I
covers
think
it.
anybody who is an elected official of
limit
the
it-
tribal government
When
should
you're
be under
speaking into the
constant
mic,
scrutiny.
you're going to need to state your name.
Oh, sorry, Joe.
Mm-hmm.
Colin Mouse. But I think, in my opinion, I don't know if it is with everybody else, but I think I would want to know if, someone that we have elected is out there acting ignorant or doing something stupid out there. And if it's up to just tribal members, we're not going to see everything. But I mean, I think it should be for anybody who sees an elected official of a tribe to come to the tribe and say, hey, this person did this, or
Discussion is still open.
Got another question on Zoom.
I think in this situation, perhaps we should add another sentence. Obviously there's ambiguous language with most governing documents, but we really need to express our intent here that we are not just looking at employees or not just looking at contractors with the tribe, but really anybody that knows something's happening. Because right now we're just saying individual or committee. We want to know from contractors, from...
But why isn't that covered under individual? Because we're not necessarily specifying who
Well, that's, I guess, what I'm asking. Do you think that covers everything?
I think so. I understand that not everybody's going to interpret it the same way, but leaving it with individuals, in my opinion, opens it up to contractors, tribal member, non-tribal member. It doesn't confine it, I guess, is what I'm, to just one specific.
And that's why it's good to put these things on the record, because as we've seen with our governing documents, there's ambiguous language in our governing resolution right now where people interpret something one way and somebody else says, no, the way you're interpreting it is completely, and me and Roman have done the same thing where we've kind of had a back and forth discussion on, trying to interpret what some of the things mean in the governing documents, because they are so ambiguous. And while ambiguity is important in some spaces, it's also important to express exactly what you mean in others. So this is up to you guys to kind of choose whether we remain ambiguous or we express exactly what we mean.
So going back to, sorry, I'm going to shift back to Barbara's question about, does this apply to employees? And the overwhelming consensus here is that this should not apply to employees, because employees are governed by other federal statutes that would then negate either some of our resolution, our governing documents, that we would then have to adhere. If we're going to tie ourselves to that, we would have to tie ourselves to IGRA and other federal mandates, which I don't think that we want to do. We want to be clear and concise with what we are expecting of our elected and appointed officials. That doesn't mean that we can't create something in unison with that, such as currently the opinion from our legal counsel is that the 2005 business ethics and conflict of interest policy is in fact a policy that the tribe has adopted, and that this body could give that more teeth, or we could do something to have the ethics commission to give that more teeth and modify that document as we go also. But as of right now, that policy is separate from what we are doing, and it's believed that we should keep employee ethics and responsibilities separate from elected and appointed officials.
So the question on Zoom is, would the upcoming tarot office that's in development cover ethics for employees?
It could. It definitely could.
I think it'll have both. I believe the tarot and draft form covers both employees as well as appointed and elected officials as two separate entities.
Mr. Chairman, do we have an ETA on that? Like, or something that we could at least get our eyes on to see where things are with that, just to have an idea? We have no idea what's happening.
So the, kind of backing up, the current tarot code draft that we have does not currently incorporate the ethics code from 2005 because the, I guess, discussion about which ethics code for employees was binding on tribal employees occurred after the draft was originally circulated. The draft in its current form just doesn't do anything with that. There is nothing, though, that stops us from taking that ethics code from 2005, since we have already this tarot code in draft, putting it right in there and adding whatever teeth, we deem appropriate. So if that's something the membership wants to do, we can definitely look. That's something I know we can do. So I don't want to take this meeting to talk about all the ways that we could, obviously if y'all want to talk about it, it's y'all's meeting, but if the general consensus is that we will handle employment ethics concerns through this tarot code, then what I would suggest is I'll leave my card, and I'm hesitant to do this, but I think this is probably the best way to do it as long as it's not abused. If you all have suggestions for ethics for employees, I'll leave my card here and you can reach out to me. And as those come in, we can consider those changes, present those to the DC, discuss them, and then roll into the draft of the tarot code. But all that is to say, I know it's probably a bad idea, but I'm willing to trust y'all with that for a minute. Worst case scenario, I have to change my email later, but that's fine. But I think that's the most efficient way to handle this matter currently, so we can focus on the ethics that apply or the concerns for the elected officials today.
Linda?
Linda Iyer. On F, instead of saying all committees and those with individual complaints, what about saying any committee and any individual with complaints? Wouldn't that cover contractors, anybody else outside the organization?
Does that speak to what you were trying to say?
I think that works.
This is Barbara Kaiser Collier again. Can of worms has been open here, I think. But just think about this. If you're an employee, or you're a committee member, or you're a vendor, or whomever you are, then what you're saying, Mr. Attorney, is that you might have a different code of ethics than the committees will have, or the individuals will have. And in any world of business, you can only have everyone answer to the same code. And that's my opinion. You can't have these individuals answering to certain codes of ethics and a committee answering to a different code of ethics. But if what you're saying is eventually you'll have the code that will be for overall everybody, then yeah, maybe that'll work, but what are you gonna do until that time? Until it's all approved? And that's just my thinking. I don't think it's probably a fair equality overall.
So what I will say is the treatment of elected and appointed officials versus employees, it's vastly different areas of law, and it's vastly just different duties and obligations. So usually what happens is employment matters are handled separately and apart from codes of ethics, which are statutory or constitutional. So they're just extremely different. And I could call on examples from different tribes or states. I'm not telling you not to make to make your motion today. I'm just making you aware of the conduct of employees versus the conduct of an elected official. They're very, very different. Okay, very different.
I agree, and it's not my motion, it's Virginia's, so it'd be up to her.
Sure. Well, but you, after her motion, you have, whatever you want to do. I'm just letting you know that I'm not trying to silence your voice or anything. I'm just putting that to you. Having the ability of a statute or a policy over employees makes a lot more sense legally speaking. Go ahead, Austin.
The only thing I would add to what Renly was saying is that when you think about the context of elected or appointed officials, that's coming, they're selected by y'all or through your representatives that you elect through that process. Employees functionally, regardless of what entity they're from, they're operating under a structure where they're getting authority from above them somewhere. So whenever you think about ethics within an employee context, you often have to take into account of what was this employee's authority, what did they understand, were they told to do something, and did that turn out to be wrong? But when you're talking about chairman, for example, there's no one above chairman except for y'all to tell him not to do something. So his ethic code will look a little different than the employee who's working at the casino because they have different authority and different considerations into how they conduct themselves, the decisions they make whenever they're handling these things. So that's the reason why, in my opinion, it's better to have those policies just separate from each other. They just involve different considerations.
This is Grace Good Eagle speaking. I appreciate, and I think many do appreciate, as it were, legal advice. This is a document for the O-gah-pah people. This is to be our document. And as I made in my prayer, I said, we want to follow the ways of Entate. And we've kind of gotten away from that. We can make it so legal that nobody can understand it. That's not for us, for the people. And so we want to try to keep that in mind, that this is a document that's going to be for the future of our people. So we don't want to get too far away from our ways, how we treat one another, how we want to have a safe environment for all of us. So again, let's not get caught up in too much verbiage. Gonna get.
Thank you, Gracie.
Kagi Superno. On section B, that's all confused. I don't know what they're trying to say. The Ethics Commission shall prepare a code of ethics to be approved by the Quapaw Indian Council. And then it says after the initial election of the Ethics Commission. Well, what election would that be? Election of officers, or that needs to be clarified.
The Ethics Commission is spoken to in the previous amendment, number 14, where the Ethics Commission gets elected, and that's their initial election. So what we're saying is after the initial election, the Ethics Commission has 1 year to present back to General Council. So that vote would take place at General Council. They then have 1 year to bring back an ethics code to General Council or a special meeting of the General Council, which gives them the opportunity to bring it before that time. Or if they're unable to do it by that year, they tell us that they can't, but we also have the leniency to have a special meeting to do that. So we're not waiting another year for that to take place. So, but what we're doing with that language is giving them a year from the date of election to come up with that ethics code.
Do you get all that from the way it's written?
All that and what?
I said, can you get all of that from the way it's written?
I think maybe you could include a reference to 14A.
The Ethics Commission shall prepare a code of ethics to be approved by the Quapaw Indian Council, period. The Ethics Commission shall prepare a code of ethics to be approved by the Quapaw Indian Council after the initial election of the Election Committee. There you go. Code of ethics shall be prepared by the next meeting. Okay. Does that make more sense? We changed the period to a comma and the uppercase to a lowercase a, so it's a complete sentence rather than two separate.
I still don't understand that after the initial election of the Ethics Commission, election for what?
The election of the Ethics Commission. Do you have another way to state that?
Well, are you saying after they approve the ethics?
After the initial first, all right? Initial would be first. After the initial election of the Ethics Commission, that body, the first election of, would that be better to say? Is anybody else having trouble with this that might want to help with the explanation?
Well, what are you actually saying when you say after the initial election of the Ethics Commission? Are you saying, or are you meaning to say after the initial election approving something? Or, I don't. So that is election of officers you're talking about. No, don't you say that?
How does that work for you, Cuggy?
Yeah. Is that all right there? You like that?
It's your suggestion, so it's up to you. Is it all right with you? We're saying the exact same thing as we were saying with the other language. We're just trying to put it in another context so that it reads better. Because I'm sure that you're probably not going to be the only one that doesn't understand the way that we structured the sentence. So we want it to be so that you could, this is your proposal. We want it to be so that you understand it.
Originally, I had suggested that we put some time frame in there for to vote, the council to vote on the ethics code, but I don't see it in there except it's just the next special session.
What would you suggest as the language to include?
Well, it takes at least 60 days, doesn't it, to call a general council? Is that correct or not? Okay. 90 days?
The time frame for what?
To call a general council. Is that 60 days?
Oh, yeah. 30. It's 30. 30 days to call a general council.
How many? 30 days?
Yes, sir.
So, and that's in the governing resolution that we are not, that's a portion that we have not amended and we're not amending right now.
So I think the issue that we're running into, Cuggy, is say you set up a date, a scope, 60 days, 90 days for this ethics code to be passed by general council. One, that's to bring an ethics code up that covers what we're trying to cover. That's going to be pretty intense in a 60 to 90 day time frame.
No, what I'm saying is after it's completed, then 60 days for the general council to consider.
Okay. I'm good with it being 30. I think that's a good suggestion.
Makes me plumb happy.
This is Linda Valier. Can I make a suggestion on the wording for B? What have we stated it as? Cuggy was referring to A, so that we refer back to A, stating pursuant to 15A, after the initial election of the Ethics Commission members, the Ethics Commission shall prepare a code of ethics. The code of ethics shall be completed by and presented to Quapaw Indian Council for approval within 12 months. Does that clarify what that, is that clear?
Cuggy, does that sound like it's acceptable to you?
I'm sorry I wasn't listening to her.
Would you like for me to read it again?
Yeah, I need to pull up that section so I can see it.
Okay, instead of what it's saying there now, say pursuant to 15A, after the initial election of the Ethics Commission members, the Ethics Commission shall prepare a code of ethics. The code of ethics shall be completed by and presented to the Quapaw Indian Council for approval within 12 months. Does that sound legally acceptable?
Are you saying give them 12 months to complete it?
Within 12 months of the election
Yeah.
of the Ethics Commission members.
But my question was, after it's completed, then I thought 30 days to be submitted to the council. I don't know if you can specify. I think a year is longer than it takes, but I don't know how you can specify that. It
Well,
may
when
be
we say,
pretty complicated.
when we're using the term within, that means that we're giving them 12 months, but they don't have to take the 12 months. Once they get it completed, they can call a special session.
Joe Caydell, I'm wondering if there's, if we could do that within a shorter time frame.
What this is in reference to is the initial document.
Right.
And the answer to that is we could ask them to, but with such a complex document, the chances are probably pretty low on that for being such a significant document. But if you think that we should compel them to a shorter time frame, it's up to this body to decide that. From a lot of our professional experience, like and I think that you would agree that 1 year it might even be a tight window for that to be completed.
So what she's asking is that we do both within the 12-month time frame. Write the document and present it to be approved or not.
This is Virginia Mouse. Can we have it written in 6 months and then approved within 12 months?
So we can put that in there. My question is, what happens if it doesn't happen? What happens if it doesn't get created or is a really poorly written draft in 6 months? I think that is our issue that we're facing with putting the time constraint, specific time constraints within that. And that was the purpose of including the language of a special general counsel called, because at any point, a special general counsel can be called, which is a 30-day time frame. So that was kind of I guess, a alternative to having that specific time included in there.
And for frame of reference, it's taken us multiple years to get to where we are right now with 17 amendments, right? If we could come up with a cleaner process for how that timeline to transact, it would still fall around a year and a half for something hardy.
I think the reason why we wanted to have a time frame on it is because a lot of people are deadline driven. I work in a deadline driven industry. And I know that within my experience, that if you don't have a deadline for people, it tends to drag out. And there's not a sense of urgency to get something like this done. I think a code of ethics for our elected officials and for our nation is one of those things that is important, and it is an urgent situation to be able to have it completed. I know that it needs to be done methodically and carefully and make sure that we have our wording correct, because it will be a governing document as well.
The current language creates the deadline as being from the election, the deadline starts to the next general counsel.
That would be correct.
Is that not what you're requesting, is to have the deadline? You suggested 12 months, where it is 12 months.
Right. That was actually my intent. My intent was for the Ethics Commission members to meet and begin the process of writing the Code of Ethics so that it can be presented to the General Counsel at the next year, or call a special session prior to that.
Or call a special check.
I just want there to be a sense of urgency on this, not to be dragged out for a long period of time. We don't need to be in limbo that long.
Your microphone's off. No. Linda, would you mind giving him your microphone?
Mr. Chairman, I do not know what the debate is on the time limit, because it's very clear if you read B, you have an election of the Ethics Committee. And then it says that they prepare the ethics document and present it at the next Quapaw Indian Council. The Quapaw Indian Council only meets once a year, unless there's a special meeting. They're elected. 12 months later, they're presented. The time frame is already in B. I don't know what the debate's about.
So, just so everyone in the room is aware, and as well as on our Zoom platform, I've been notified by our IT that a profile account on our virtual platform of Zoom used a pornographic photo for their profile picture. They have been removed, but as a precaution, admission to the Zoom link is now turned off. We do apologize for the offensive nature of this issue and thank the IT department for swiftly addressing it. Gonna get.
Okay. Mr. Chair, I move to amend the language presented. For number 15 to read by majority vote, shall the Quapaw Indian Council adopt a code of ethics to be administered by the Ethics Commission and amend the governing resolution to add subsection 6.2B, C, and D to provide B, after the initial election of the Ethics Commission officers, the Ethics Commission shall prepare a code of ethics to be approved by the Quapaw Indian Council. The code of ethics shall be prepared and draft presented no less than 30 days before the next meeting of the Quapaw Indian Council or at a special meeting of the Quapaw Indian Council. The code of ethics shall contain provisions for conflicts of interest, procurement, illicit and prohibited conduct, abuse of power, retaliation, gifts received, undue influence, violations of the ethics code, and penalties, ethics commission procedures for complaints, resolving conflicts or matters, exceptions, and confidential information. The Ethics Commission shall have the authority to amend the Code of Ethics. Amendments to the Code of Ethics are effective upon approval by the Quapaw Indian Council. Any proposed amendment can be presented at a special meeting of the Quapaw Indian Council called for the purpose of amending the Code of Ethics. A special meeting called for the purpose of amending the Code of Ethics shall be called within 60 days of request from the Ethics Commission. All committees, elected and appointed officials shall adhere to the Code of Ethics. Any committee or individual with a complaint may seek the assistance of the Ethics Commission as the committee or individual deems necessary.
Okay, we have a motion to amend the language of Amendment 15. Do I have a second?
I second.
We have a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, we're going to put it to the Election Committee for a vote on this motion.
Courtesy reminder, just since there's been a delay in, or a lapse in time to vote, make sure your monitor, your voting device is turned on. Gonna go. Open to vote. Voting has ceased.
Okay, by 86.2%, the General Council has voted yes for adopting the language to Amendment 15. And now at this time, I will entertain a motion to adopt Amendment 15 in total.
I would like to make an amendment to adopt 15 as the language was presented.
You are making the motion to adopt Amendment 15,
I second it.
not as presented, but as amended. Okay. Would you like to restate your motion?
I would like to make a motion to adopt Amendment 15 as amended.
Okay. I'll accept your motion.
I second it.
We have a second. Now we'll move into discussion or debate on the matter. Okay. Election Committee.
Let the voting begin, please. Voting has ceased.
Okay. With a vote of 88.9%, Amendment 15 passes.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we remove Amendment 6 from the table.
Okay.
Second it.
We have a motion to remove 6 and bring it off the table. And then we have a second, and that is non-debatable item. So we move to a vote for a majority vote. Election Committee?
Mr. Chairman, would you like me to read it to the body? Okay.
Sure.
The amendment that is motion to be removed to the table is item 6, which states, by majority vote, shall the Quapaw Indian Council amend the governing resolution subsection 4 to add subsection 4D to provide, unless changed by vote of the Quapaw Indian Council, all Quapaw Nation commissions, agencies, instrumentalities, and entities shall report to the Business Committee. This excludes any commissions or instrumentalities elected by and answerable to the Quapaw Indian Council. Each Quapaw Nation entity, charter, or organic document is hereby amended to include the provision that no business committee member may be a member of those entities' governing boards. This section and section 4C shall be effective 6 months from the day of passage of this provision.
Linda, can we go ahead and have the yes, no, abstain, just for clarity?
Begin voting, please.
And again, just so we're all clear, this amendment, we're not voting to approve Amendment 6, we're voting to bring it off the table.
Voting has ceased.
So with 77.3% in the affirmative, we are bringing Amendment 6 off of the table. And before we go any further, I'm going to, I believe under Robert's rules, it's a bathroom break. So 15-minute recess and give time to get some food in our belly. We need to get caught up on our notes and graduate from this cold biscuits and gravy we got behind us. Okay, we're going to go ahead and continue coming out of recess. I'm going to turn it over to Roman now.
Mr. Chair, I move to adopt the language on item 6, which states, by majority vote shall the Quapaw Indian Council amend the governing resolution section 4 to add subsection 4D to provide, unless changed by vote of the Quapaw Indian Council, the business committee shall oversee all Quapaw Nation commissions, agencies, instrumentalities, and entities, and each Quapaw Nation entity, charter, or organic document is hereby amended to include the provision that no business committee member may be a member of those entities' governing boards. This section and section 4B will be effective 6 months from the date of passage of this provision.
Second the motion.
I'll accept your motion and then a second, and then we'll move to discussion on the amendment.
Mr. Chair, I want to correct some language here. In what we were referring to at the time of 4B, that is now section 4C would be under item 5 of what we have already approved, and that refers to the compensation. So I just want to point that out, that I said 4B, but the intent is 4C in your booklets. Or 4C, but item 5 in your booklet, item 5.
Roman, can you kind of clarify for us and the rest of the council? Because there's some language in here that we voted on in the previous October meeting that seems to have changed the order of these subsect. Can you just kind of speak to that so we all have the same clarity?
Yes. The last line where it says this section and section 4 on the screen and in your booklets, 4C shall be effective 6 months from the day of passage of this provision. 4C is on the previous page in your book under item 5, and that says, by majority vote shall the Quapaw Indian Council amend the governing resolution to section 4 to add section 4C to provide compensation to the business committee members will be paid solely and directly from the Quapaw Nation. Compensation from any other Quapaw tribal entity is prohibited. If a new compensation amount is not approved by the Quapaw Indian Council, the Quapaw Business Committee members' compensation shall revert to the most recent approved compensation amounts by the Downstream Development Authority. Once the Quapaw Indian Council approves the first business committee compensation, any future non-approval shall trigger no change in compensation. So that section right there, what I just read, was approved in October. All right. So that compensation would not go in conjunction with item 6 here, would not go into effect until 6 months after the passing of provision 6. And that's so that compensation would coincide with the removal of the business committee from the DDA, that they would continue to be compensated by the DDA coffers until they're removed from the DDA, and then section 4C would go into effect along with this section, and they would then be compensated by the Quapaw tribe and no other entity other than the Quapaw tribe.
So, just to remind everybody, back in October, this amendment proposal was tabled. And the reason that it was tabled is because there was a question as to what legal effect it would have specifically on the downstream. And because there was that question, that's why it was tabled. And there was a legal opinion sought to do an analysis of what that would actually look like and the result of that, and if it would trigger, if there were any other triggering events that could lead to. And so I think at this time, the council would be well served to hear the authors of the legal opinion. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to our legal representation.
All right, everyone. Well, I don't know who had the time or concern to read the memo, but the long and short of it is there were two main legal concerns. One was, what does it take legally to remove, the BC from all these various boards? And then the other concern was about this 6-month time frame to accomplish that. The vast majority of the memo just reiterates that there is no legal barrier preventing removing the business committee from these committees. It's something that can be done, but the issue that I raise is more a question of logistics of there's a lot of committees that the BC serve on for the Quapaw Nation, and getting off of all of those within 6 months could prove to be functionally difficult or very expensive for the nation. Because with that 6-month timeline, it may come down to the nation would have to hire some sort of third-party management company in the interim to ensure that those companies operate effectively while the BC is, trying to complete this transition. So the 6-month time frame, if the BC couldn't complete that transition within that 6-month period, but this is mandated in the governing resolution, then that's too bad and we're gonna have to pay someone else to do it. That's not to say it can't be done, just the feasibility of it seems unlikely to me, in my opinion. So I also believe, and the DDA memo speaks to this, the second issue is that currently the language proposed for the 6-month is ambiguous because it reads to me as though if you read it literally, which is how we would interpret it statutorily in court, the last sentence reads as though this provision may only be effective for 6 months. So just a little clarification there to say that it'll be effective after 6 months or something to that effect, but right now there's two different interpretations that I think are both possible legally, and one is this provision's only effective for 6 months, and the other is it's effective after 6 months. So my suggestion would be that the Indian Council consider the number of committees that the BC does have involvement on and perhaps give them more time to get off these committees, or if the central issue is downstream, the DDA, then focus on removing them from downstream in that 6-month period, and then the other committees could follow after that, or some other way. I'll leave that to you all, but those are the legal considerations that are covered in the memo, and I'm happy to answer any questions if anyone has any.
This is Virginia Mouse. So effectively, what committees are you on as BC members? Saracen, Downstream, Quapaw Casino, are there any others? Just so that everybody's aware.
The ones that we identified for the memo purposes, which I do not believe is exhausted, but I'll say these are the top probably 8 commissions or so, maybe 10. It's the 3 you identified: the Quapaw Tribe Tax Commission, the Quapaw Cattle Company, the Intertribal Council and Boards, the Gaming Association, and the Highway 166 Development Corporation. So those are the entities that were analyzed in the memo. But because we're amending the governing resolution, any other committees that are identified, even if they're more less action-oriented and more for just informational purposes, than the BC would be.
Can I get you to slow down on those committees? Because I'm trying to write them down.
Yes, and they're all covered in the first page of the booklet. You all have the DDA memo. I think it starts on
Fair enough. I didn't see that. Thank you.
Absolutely. I also did want to make one other clarification. On Part C of the memo, you'll note that there are what I call non-Quapaw entities. These are entities where the BC may serve on a board that is a joint venture with either other tribes or the state of Oklahoma or what have you, but those may not be considered Quapaw entities per se, and they may be governed by bylaws.
I think the main ones that concern me are, because we've had such issues with the DDA, and you know, Saracen and Quapaw Casino just seem to fall under that hat. So I think I'm more concerned with those. I'm not so concerned with the tax commission or the cattle company or ITC. Me personally, I'm more concerned with those gaming entities. And then at that point, we have to rewrite those charters.
So I think if the concern is the gaming entities, I think that's much more feasible to get done in 6 months, if that's where we're starting.
Okay, Abigail here. And if you go ahead, I did, no. Okay, behave. Mm. Oh, if you replace the DDA from the business committee members to actual tribal members, are they going to be receiving compensation from being on the DDA?
That would be a decision for y'all to make, but I will say, because the DDA is a casino entity, I think for you all to get the most qualified candidates, you would want to offer them compensation. But get some feedback, but I'd leave that to y'all.
So y'all gonna continue to have these problems. That's all I'm saying.
This is Jody Whitecrow. Would it not be better to have one board that governed all 3 casinos, separate from the BC, so that way that board reports back to the business committee? We already have a general manager.
It should also be noted that the resolution that gives the DDA compensation was a BC resolution that could easily be rescinded.
This is Virginia Mouse. I like Jody's idea. I realize that it creates more work for these individuals, but it's all the same it's all the same industry. So I like the idea of one committee for all, or whatever you want to call it, all over the gaming enterprises. So maybe Quapaw Nation Gaming Enterprise Board.
Excuse me, this is Barbara Kaiser Collier again. Can we have a little transparency from the group up there, please?
Oh, it's okay. Oh, I'll take it. I was gonna say, we don't have
Barbara, thank you for that. We're trying to get the right approach to this, which is creating some confusion between us internally. And now that we've got it kind of lined out, what Jody has presented as consolidation of our gaming entities, and what Virginia has presented as something as being this referring to only the gaming entities is what we're talking about, and we're not necessarily referring to the tax commission, the intertribal agencies and such. That we are meaning the QCA, the Downstream Development Authority, the Saracen Development Authority, and that we're trying to get that language correct, and also how to accommodate the consolidation of those at the same time. And so we're getting legal opinion on what that really looks like. And what we've come up with is that, one, we say 6 months from the day of passage to 6 months from the passage of this provision. But then we leave, there's got to be some time for a feasibility structure or feasibility application to go into place with these other gaming entities and what that would look like. But the intent for what we're doing with this measure is removing them, not, so this is to take the step for removal, not necessarily how it's all going to work once it's done. and leave the business committee some leniency and latitude to be able to come up with those methods themselves, and giving legal counsel some opportunity to take a look at all of our enterprises and seeing if there's a best approach or a best structure to that. And it's not something that we could have the answer for today, but for this measure, we can say that, yes, this is what we want to do. We want to remove the business committee from our gaming entity boards and leave it at that.
Colin Mouse here. Can we also put it to where they're not active members of other committees as well? On the gaming board, that they're not.
Specifically subcommittees?
Yeah, specifically subcommittees.
I think that'd be for a different time too. Like the intent of the section is just removal.
Can you reiterate for clarity purposes what committees you're talking, what subcommittees you're talking about?
Where our gaming committee is different from other entities, as in like the cattle company or QSA or other things like that.
So you're referring to all subcommittees and not specific subcommittees.
Right. Where they can only hold one, be a member of one committee and not other committees underneath them.
I think that limits.
Whereas they can't be part of the grievance committee and then be on the gaming board, or be a part of the ethics committee and be on the gaming board, things like that.
This is Linda Valier. I have a suggestion. Instead of saying that the separation should be effective within 6 months of the passage of the provision, what if we said that there needs to be a plan for the separation within 6 months of the provision? That way it gives us time to set a plan to present to the council to determine if the plan is going to work or not. And I would also like to say that I agree with having a single gaming commission board for all three. I think I opened another can of worms.
Now I'm thinking that may not be such a good thing.
Are you thinking that there's not enough capacity?
No, I'm thinking that's what our general managers are for. We've hired them, we put our trust in them. They report to the BC, kind of just like what we're doing now. The only difference is the BC's acting as the DDA, and all you have to do is take that title away. Right?
The whole purpose of pulling the business committee from DDA and them is because for having the separation of duties, and also because BC has so many other things to take care of for the tribe and for the nation. You come into a capacity issue. There needs to be somebody that can really focus on the gaming industry, and then so that they can focus on the nation and the governing of the tribe and all the other things they have to do.
That's still what your general managers are for, is to focus on your gaming. And they just report to the BC. Is that not correct?
I think the appropriate question is to ask our legal team if the DDA is needed at all. I think that's where you guys are kind of headed with this. Is the legal opinions that we've got says you can remove the BC from the DDA, but do we need it? That's probably a more appropriate question.
And if I may also ask, this is Grace Good Eagle speaking. We are hopeful that in a matter of years, Downstream and the casino will be owned by the O-gah-pah. We're still paying off our debt. So will that change then? Once we're paid, it's our entity.
I think this is just I'm weighing in on the conversation, not just as an individual. That for me and owning my business, it's important for me to have an LLC because that insulates me and my family from any retribution or anything from another entity bringing suit towards me, right? And that's what the DDA does and these boards do. They insulate, these are the governing and managing boards of these entities, and those boards insulate us, the people, from suit from any vendors or anybody else that we deal with on that regard. So there's just that piece to keep into consideration, that while it's still me doing the business, I'm insulated because I'm a limited liability company, just as we are insulated from any external suit or retribution because we have the DDA, and they're the ones who are insulating us from that, or that body is who that is. So something to consider in that regard also.
So that would be the reason why we need the DDA.
Potentially, there might be better solutions. But that's just potential. That's why I'm who my company is, right? I don't know if that's going to be the best solution, or if it's even, in the same realm of a solution. But we do need to insulate ourselves in some way.
Specifically, the DDA, as Roman just pointed out, limited liability, right? They can take certain aspects or certain things, but they can't come after the tribe as a whole or any individual member of that LLC. But that, I don't think that means that we have to grant them any real authority. And perhaps maybe that's the way to go, is we strip the authority of the DDA and of the SDA and all the other entities that are created like that.
So my other concern is capacity of time. So how much time does the BC members spend on the gaming entities as opposed to the tribal governance? If they're spending an equal amount of time, or the gaming is taking more time away, or is there things not being taken care of because they're spending extra time for the gaming industry? That would be one of my concerns, one of my main concerns, to make sure that this gets separated.
Yeah, I mean, we have our business committee here who could probably speak to what they think, and even past committee business members that might be able to speak to what they think would be a feasible and reasonable expectation that we include. So if anybody from the business committee wants to weigh in on that, we'd love to hear it.
If I'm hearing your question, Linda, correctly, I think your concern is resolved by just including the footnote from this legal opinion, page 2 of 6, where it talks about a grace period, 6-month grace period to reorganize the entities if the removal amendment is adopted. Does that clarify?
I agree with that.
So can we include that as part of the language?
This is Barbara Kaiser Collier again. That's not the reason behind the creation of those entities. And if there was someone in here that could explain that, which there are individuals that can, it might make it more clear as to why the DDA was created, and the QCA, and the now SCA. We know why the SCA was created, because the other two already existed. But the liability was not the main reason that those were created.
So section 104 of the DDA charter states the purposes for which the authority is organized are as follows. 1, to develop, construct, operate, manage, maintain, and promote the facilities, and to have custody of, inventory, and manage all assets of the facilities on behalf of the tribe, to carry out the purposes and intent of the Indian Gaming Regulatory Act and of the Tribal Gaming Ordinance adopted pursuant to that act, as either the IGRA or that ordinance may be amended from time to time. 3, to negotiate with federal, state, and local governments and private entities as appropriate, and to enter into and implement contracts in furtherance of the development, construction, operation, management, maintenance, and promotion of the facilities. 4, to provide the maximum possible economic benefit to the tribe, including without limitation from the minimum priority distribution, from the operation of the facilities, consistent with the development and operation of a legal and profitable gaming facility and ancillary facilities, from the terms of any applicable management or financing agreements, and where practical, from the employment of members of the tribe in the operation of the facilities and consistent with the tribal preference ordinance. 5, to arrange and raise the financing for the activities and purposes of the authority set forth in this ordinance. 6, to assume and carry out all of the obligations relating to the project made by the Tribal Business Committee on behalf of the tribe before the establishment of the authority. Those are the purposes that are listed in Section 104 of the DDA Charter. In addition to those, the authority is authorized to take all actions necessary, proper, advisable, or convenient for the accomplishment of the purposes for which the authority is established, and to do all things incidental thereto or connected therewith.
Linda Valier. I don't know about anybody else, but it sounds to me like that list of responsibilities is full-time positions. So if we have business committee members that are attempting to govern and at the same time trying to follow the list of responsibilities under the DDA, their time is split quite a bit, and there really isn't enough capacity for business committee to take care of both appropriately and effectively.
Hi, Joe Montgomery. I just have a question for some of the BC or one of them to speak up and say how much time are you really spending on the casinos as part of your work, whether it be Joe or Callie or Larry, somebody to say how much of time is spent on the casino work versus what the DDA would do.
This is Barbara Kaiser Collier again. And just to recall a meeting, general council meeting we had several years ago, when questioned about the pay of the Downstream Development Authority, we were informed through Jack Brill, who was then the legal counsel, through the Chairman Barry, that the bond holders were the ones that required the Downstream Development Authority to be paid salaries. If you'll recall, and you can go back on the minutes and hear what he had to say. So that's some of the underlying things that aren't being brought out today about why the DDA exists and what transpires through the rules and regulations that were just read.
I do remember, I think that was stated in multiple general counsels as well, from both the legal counsel at the time and our chairman at the time. And correct me if I'm wrong, business committee, what we have found through the refinancing is that none of that was true, right? Am I correct on that? That our bondholders were not obligating our DDA to be paid, but that it was the decision of the business committee for the DDA to be paid?
Roman, Callie Bowden. From my understanding, that is what I have gathered as well. As far as answering how much time we dedicate currently to our casinos, to answer that question, twice a month, on Mondays, all day long, we have our gaming meetings. That is how much time we dedicate to it. All the wheels are set in motion. There's policies and procedures and federal guidelines that we have to follow. Those are all implemented. When there is a problem or something new arises, it is brought to our attention. So that is the extent that we're currently working with it.
Callie, this is Linda Davis. Just a quick question. Outside of that time in those meetings, you say that you dedicate those twice monthly. When you look at what's discussed in those meetings, then what entail, do you have to like maybe go outside of that meeting to accomplish a task? Then how much time does that take? For example, I just know like by being on different committees of different things, we have a meeting, then we have tasks at hand to do, and then we come back. So yes, you've dedicated, those are 2 dedicated days, but time outside of that. Could you give us a percentage, just not necessarily just off the top of your head percentage, I guess, of how much time is gaming and how much time is tribal government? And other business committee that are present as well, I would, take your input too. If you could just give us, is it 80-20, 75-25, 50-50 between gaming and tribal government? Gonna go.
It's kind of an umbrella question. There is a lot in this nation. There's a lot of departments. There's a lot of things going on. We've attempted to do a divide and conquer. We come together to make our decisions, or we're supposed to. We try to dedicate our days to each entity. There are certain days that we dedicate strictly to the nation, strictly to gaming, all of the stuff in between from, forestry, food sovereignty, EMS, fire, all of the above. It is a lot. I don't have an answer on how to organize that. Every single day is different. Typically, we can get away every single month having our meetings twice a month. Yes, additional tasks get put on us, and somebody might pick up that project and run with it. For example, Quapaw Casino. They're in the middle of making a new facility, but our general manager has taken that project on. He's working on it. He brings it to us, and he asks for guidance on those Monday meetings. So our time is really, dedicated, but yes, it will go outside that Monday meeting, but not a lot of the time. So I really can't give you a percentage because every single day is different. I hope that answers your question. And I would encourage any other BC member to please speak up too and give your opinion on this.
Hey, Linda. I actually maintain a pretty meticulous diary. Unfortunately, I'm about 2 or 3 weeks behind. So I track all my time every day on the weekends. And I've never evaluated how much time was spent on gaming versus other business. I'd like to be able to say that it's 25% on gaming and 75% on everything else, but I don't think that's true. If I actually sat down and looked at the numbers, it's more like 50-50. That would be my best guess, but I know my goal was always to, you do the most good you can possibly do where you think you can make a contribution. Most people know that my gaming background before August the 20th, was non-existent. And so I've had a pretty steep learning curve. And it's been enjoyable, but it is very demanding. And it does take me more time than it takes others due to my lack of gaming background. So that's why I'm saying it's more like 50-50 right now, even though I would like that not to be the case.
Testing, yeah. For the purpose of this amendment, aren't we just trying to estimate how much time it takes and acknowledging that a reorganization will have to be done and estimate the time it would take? We're not trying to do the reorganization here today, are we? I mean, it sounds like that's what we're getting into.
That's correct, Cuggy. I think that what we're gathering is just additional information to make an informed decision on this, but you're correct that we are only making the decision to separate the business committee from these gaming entities, not to construct how everything's going to happen afterwards.
So we're just trying to estimate how much time that will take, isn't that right?
Yes, and we're suggesting the 6 months and identifying that 6 months is a grace period for the business committee to conduct that study or develop those documents. Yeah.
All right.
Okay, this is Larry Mercer, and I'll attempt to answer that. As I've only been on the committee since October, I'm not going to be as appraised of all of it as the others, but I would go along with Callie. 25 to maybe 30% of the time we have meetings here, but say on Monday we start at 10, we may stop off at 2 other places because they want to talk and discuss. I've been to the cattle company prior to coming up here and having our meetings up here. So I would say 25 to 30%, but you may come up here and have your meetings. You may stop before, you may even after. I mean, it may be 6 o'clock before you get finished and go home. Not just from the DDA, but some of the other entities. And there are scheduled meetings monthly with different departments. So the time is spread out everywhere. And if you put in 40 hours or 50, you're going to cover it all. And to me, it's not that much of a burden, but hey, the people have to decide what they want. And that's about all I have to say.
So Linda, just to answer your question, in my capacity as both chairman of the tribe and chairman of the DDA, I'd like to think it's 50-50. And it changes depending on if there's certain projects that are heavy on the gaming enterprise side, or there's certain projects that arise on the tribal government side. I'll tend to lend more attention to that and, lean on the leadership within our gaming enterprises, or vice versa. If I'm leaning into the gaming enterprise, and then I rely on the leadership on the tribal government side. So it kind of fluctuates. So you may 50-50 most of the time, but sometimes it's 60-40 with gaming being 60, and then sometimes it's 60-40 with tribal government being 60. It just kind of depends.
Since we're discussing possible consequences of potential actions, should we eliminate the various casino agencies? How would that affect our ability to take out loans for the casinos?
When you're referring to agencies, do you mean all gaming entities of the nation, or are you referring to the gaming enterprises?
I'm specifically talking about the Quapaw Casino Gaming Agency, the Downstream Casino Gaming Agency, and its Saracen counterpart.
Okay, I just want to make sure you weren't talking about the regulatory side of things. So and I speak to this a bit, and I talk about how this memo didn't address that question, but as part of doing this, I had to look at that restructured loan document, which I think is quite long. But the short of it is, we would have to do a new analysis and determine if I right now don't believe you could get rid of the DDA and be compliant with that agreement. We'd have to seek permission from the loan holders to do that. And I don't know that they'd have much incentive to agree to that, to be honest. But the idea of getting rid of it we can't get rid of the entity that's a party to that huge restructured loan. That's just it's a tall order, I guess, is the short of it.
Okay, my long-term concern, let's say we pay off the loans and then we decommission those boards. Let's say something tragic happens at one of our casinos and we need to take out a loan to cover expenses for the recovery. Would the elimination of the board then be a problem?
I don't believe that would be an issue in that specific hypothetical, as long as there's a clear structure as to who has authority to govern that board and who can bind the gaming enterprise, like you said, Quapaw Casino, for example. As long as that's clear in the law, such that whoever's giving the loan would feel comfortable making that loan, I don't think that would be an issue later on. But just speaking to the current loan as causing that issue, potentially.
Okay, we should keep that in mind should we decide to pursue that path.
Barbara Kaiser Collier again. I disagree. I think that legally that can be taken care of with your loan entity. What you're saying is probably a problem, but I don't think it's a problem that can't be overcome. Several months ago, I asked for a clarification of the restructuring of the nation, and I think that it's really a good plan. Want to describe to me the different departments that were taking place, and that there was going to be a director, or is that what you called it, executive director, over different departments, and there would be different programs under those departments. So why can you not include gaming as sort of, as Jody mentioned, to have an executive director over all three of the gaming facilities? Just like you have, what is it with the fire and EMS, you have a director that's over EMS and fire and all of those services that are medical or whatever. I don't know. Weena would have to explain which ones they're under because I don't recall. But why can you not include that and do away with the DDA, the QCA, and the SCA and have the executive director over all of those entities, just as you are with the rest of the nation, so it will be inclusive overall?
To that specific idea of having one executive director for all casinos, I think Vice Chair actually mentioned something similar. So I just really have to reiterate, I do feel as though this current loan agreement has the DDA as the principal entity on behalf of the nation, so that's a bigger mountain to climb than I think the question gives credit to. But assuming you could overcome that, our only concern about the structure that you're talking about would be, is it compliant with federal laws, specifically the Indian Gaming Regulatory Act and those regulations? And as long as that's the case, then if there's no restriction, then yeah, we could set it up however the nation would see fit. That's also why this grace period is important, because we can do a feasibility study on these different structures, look at if there's one manager directing it, look at if it's directly reporting to the BC, look at if we have a board, a gaming board of some sort. Those are all things we can cover in between now and this entity becoming effective and make it part of that feasibility study that we've kind of been alluding to up here.
That would be a plan. You need to get someone that knows specifically about gaming regulation and rules, and get their input on what you can and can't do.
Any other discussion?
Call for the question.
Mr. Lloyd Buffalo, it seems quite apparent to me today to what's going on that this action is to them deny some of the responsibilities of the Quapaw Tribal Business Committee, excuse the Nation Business Committee. You know, this is being discussed right now, this section about removing the business committee from all the entities. You know, it amazes me that nothing was discussed except gaming. That is apparent what's happening. The people here don't know that, they're stupid. And I mean that. It's apparent, it's an effort to diminish the power of the business committee. And I speak from my heart. I was brought up to respect the elders and listen to the elders. That's where the knowledge comes from. Yet I know, and he's going to get mad at me, there's one member of that Constitution Committee, he's my own cousin, and he said and told people I was too old to serve on the business committee. I have more knowledge than anybody sitting up there. And I do not respect Mr. Vance's opinions. He made a decision on the Robert's Rules of Order concerning the Compensation Committee, which totally was wrong. And people here can tell you that it was on Business Committee that in one paragraph, I made the right decision under Robert's Rules of Order. But I know it cost the nation over $4,000 to get a legal opinion to say that I was right. I just hate it, what's happened to the nation today. You know, I sat back and I told someone, today is the beginning of the death of a nation, and that's what it is. You need to respect your elders, you need to listen to your elders. Young people have a lot of ideas, but young people need experience. And I don't know what to say. I'm ashamed of the tribe today. I speak from the heart. I make decisions from the heart. Not what's on paper, but my decisions are right, even by law. And I do know that some things that were discussed the other day are violations of the Indian Civil Rights Act. I don't think anybody's took that into consideration. And I will say again, I'm ashamed of the tribe of what's going on today.
Okay.
Got a question on Zoom from Amy. Are you guys paid separately for being on the BC and DDA or all one salary?
It is all one salary based on, I believe it was a 2009 resolution or a 2007 resolution that set the compensation for every DDA member. And once the resolution was passed in September of 2020, the resolution I'm referring to that changed the membership of the DDA to include the elected BC members so that they would be the authority, the Downstream Development Authority. Once that occurred, members of the business committee, I guess, relinquished or denied the approved stipends, monthly stipends, which I think it has a value of $400 per member, which now goes back to the Gen Fund of the tribe. And for the record, I'm proud of what's happening here this weekend. It takes a lot for everybody to come out and sit in the same room with everyone and discuss these ideas of trying to progress our nation forward. It's contentious ideas, but you know, we're hashing these things out, and I'm proud of that. It's hard, and you know, our government grows as our businesses change, as the world changes around us. We have to adapt to that as well, and it seems to happen and occur every almost 20 years now, with the last one being our election and voting ordinance. So I think that we're moving in a right direction. I think the original intent was to have a constitution. You know, maybe sometimes too much change too quick isn't good. And I think these amendments to our resolutions were long overdue, have been long overdue. And I'm hopeful that it gets us one step closer to, you know, a constitution in the future. Any other discussion? If not, I'm going to call for the vote. Do we have the proper language clarified?
Mr. Chair, I move to adopt the language that says, unless changed by vote of Quapaw Indian Council, all Quapaw Nation commissions, agencies, instrumentalities, and entities shall report to the Business Committee. This excludes any commissions or instrumentalities elected by and answerable to the Quapaw Indian Council. Each Quapaw Nation entity, charter, or committee member charter or organic document is hereby amended to include the provision that no business committee member may be a member of those entities' governing boards. This section and section 4C shall be effective 6 months from the day of passage of this provision. This 6-month grace period shall be allowed for the reorganization of the entities if this removal amendment is adopted.
I second that motion.
So we have a motion to amend the main motion and then a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll put it to the election committee for a vote.
Chairman Byrd, could you clarify again? I'm sorry. Is it the language or is it the?
It's the language.
Okay.
Voting on the language.
Thank you. Begin voting, please. The voting has ceased.
Okay, by a vote of 57.9% to agree to change the language of the amendment of 6.
Mr. Chair, I move to adopt Amendment 6 as amended.
I have a motion to adopt Amendment 6 as amended.
Second.
Second. Any discussion? And call for the vote and turn it over to the election committee.
Begin voting, please. Amendment 6. Voting has ceased.
Okay, by 52.8%, adoption of Amendment 6 has passed.
Mr. Chair, the Constitution Committee has no other amendments to address.
Do you want to drop down on action item B for future Constitutional Committee priorities and talk about next steps?
So at this time, given the discussion from the 17 amendments to be put up for election by our general counsel in whole, perhaps there might be some other ideas that have surfaced for us to consider, or items that you may want us to address that you aren't hearing here. If you weren't present at the October special meeting that began this process, some of the items that that were all brought up had to do with roles and responsibilities of the business committee. And I'm going to read some of those. I'm not going to read all of them, but they spoke to things like the oath of office. Can we create a rules and standards as tribal members? Quapaw rules of order instead of Robert's rules of order. Civics requirements for running for office or being a member of the tribe. So things along those lines are what some of this body have brought forward as being concerns and things that we would like to talk about further.
Are you asking also if there's any suggestions you want to hear from us as to what we would like for you to work on at this time, or are you just informing us?
Exactly the point.
Okay, I'll go first. Callie Bowden, I've got a suggestion, and it's probably not going to be a favorable one, but we just ended this vote, and it ended with a 1.7% of eligible Quapaw voters just now. Yesterday, our vote ended with 2% participation. What I would like to suggest in the future for a tribal member to be eligible for any benefit from the tribe, they must participate in some kind of event in the tribe once a year. That event can be voting in one election, attending a general council meeting, attending a BC meeting, either in person or online, attending a cultural event, participating in a survey, serving on a committee. Something must be contributed on behalf of the tribal member in order to receive the benefit from the tribe. So I would just like to get that proposed, please.
Isn't that overreaching? Like, how can you, oh, this is Kristen Keys. That's overreaching. Like, how can you, we have some elders that are homebound, that don't have access to internet. Some of our tribal members don't even have phones. How can you demand them to be present when they have no access?
That access can be gotten to them. We can do it through mail. We can even make an exception for elders. We just need some kind of incentive to get our people involved. And that's just what I'm suggesting, is some kind of incentive.
Roman, I don't want to step into the middle of that discussion if there's an ending point. I would like to revisit the discussion of Section 9, I believe it was, employees serving on the grievance committee.
I'm sorry, I don't know who's talking here. Sorry, Choke. Can you say that again?
I'd like to revisit the discussion of employees serving on the grievance committee.
Okay, so point of order, the discussion right now is about the agenda item that we have, agenda item B for this. So once we conclude with the agenda items, I believe motions to reconsider can be heard after
Okay,
that.
good. That's...
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the time, right? Like, this is your time. If you don't need a vote, if there's a concern that you have that we're not addressing, this is it, right? Like, just throw it out there. There's nothing wrong or there's nothing right or even debatable about this moment right now. This is your opportunity to make suggestion for us to look at specific areas. We got a hand on the wall.
All right, my name is Sarah Hyatt, and I don't know if this would be the time to talk about like mandatory maybe hours. Like, I overheard somebody saying that maybe they put in 40 hours a week. So like on our BC, to hold something like where they're responsible for, I don't know necessarily about clock time, but like to make sure that everybody's getting their 40 hours or more a week at minimum. Like, you know, I used to run a Sonic. I had to be there for 55 hours and I got $400 a week and I gave my everything. So like if people that get, I don't know if this happens, I'm just saying, like they only put in 20 hours, like are they accountable? Like is this the place where that would be, like on a constitution? I don't know.
So I think it'd be helpful information for everybody here to understand what next. What's the plan? What's that look like? Time frame, ballot measure, election committee involvement.
I was just reading the So petitions, section 16.1, it says the members of the Quapaw tribe reserve the power to independently propose ordinances, resolutions, or other enactments affecting the Quapaw tribe. Any proposed initiative measure shall be presented to the business committee accompanied by a petition signed by at least 100 registered voters of the tribe. Upon receipt of the petition, the business committee shall either adopt the initiative measure by a majority vote without alteration or call an election for the purpose of allowing registered voters to vote on the initiative measure. The election shall be held within 120 days from the date a valid petition is presented to the business committee. The vote of a majority of the registered voters in response to such petitions shall be binding, final, and non-appealable to any tribunal. The election on the initiative measure, if called, shall be conducted using the procedures herein described by the election ordinance.
Linda, do you have a question?
I just wanted to actually make a couple of comments.
I would also like.
Well, I wanted to say that I have to agree with Callie on the fact that we need to bring more of our tribal members and get them more involved in our community and what's going on. They benefit from what the business committee and what the council is doing and the decisions that are made and everything. But I think we need to do something with incentivized programs. Something that I've kind of thought about for a while. It's imperative that we bring our members back and get them more involved. If we don't, and especially if we don't bring our young members back in and our kids back into it and get them more involved, this tribe will die. Lloyd Buffalo was right about that. I don't want to see the tribe die. I want to see us continue on. I want to see us, with everything that we're doing here with these business, continue to benefit all of the members of the tribe. There's a couple of things that I thought of to do. One of them has to do with education programs. Setting up some scholarship programs. I know that there are some scholarship programs out there that you get a scholarship like for a nursing degree. You get your nursing degree, they pay for everything for your education, but you're required to come back and work in a certain area of the nursing for 4 or 5 years to help pay that back. Allow our kids to get an education and they can choose their degree, but they need to use that degree to come back and work with the tribe for a few years so that they are paying back what they received as well as benefiting the community as a whole. It brings them back into the fold. It brings them back to the community. It'll help to perpetuate our community and keep the O-gah-pah traditions going. The other thing that I was thinking of, when we're looking at general council meetings, and then the few people that actually show up to work on these things, especially with some of the special general council meetings, is this, what if, let me preface this with the reason I thought of this was because there, like she said, there's some of our elders who are homebound who can't be there. Our tribe has clans. What if we used our clans to create a representative system? So the clans, the different clans we bring out, and I know this is going to take quite a bit of research and a work to do this, but what if we set up a representative system where each one of the family groups or the clans were able to decide on a representative for their family or their clan to attend the general council meetings and basically represent them and help to make the decisions. That way, we don't have to reach out. We're still getting the opinions and the voices from everybody, but not everyone has to be here. How many members do we have enrolled in the tribe right now?
Upwards of 5,700.
Okay, so we've got 5,700 people. It's not feasible to have 5,700 people in this room, right? So to get even 3,000 people in this room and to make all of their schedules with their busy lives and wherever they are scattered across the United States, if they had someone that they could turn to and say, hey, I know this is coming up. Here's my ideas. Here's some concerns I have. This is some things that I'd like to have presented. And then that person actually is the one that comes and shows up and presents all of that for them. I know that we're getting to be a little bit bigger than what we had before, and that's a good thing. But we have to have some systems in place to get our people involved again. That's just some ideas. I don't ever like to bring up issues or problems without having some kind of a solution or ideas to resolve for resolutions. Just food for thought. Thank you.
Nathan Phelps here. I just wanted to say thank you to our elders. This is my first actual coming together for general council. And I have learned a lot. I mean, over the 3 days of us coming together, I have literally learned a lot, and I'm very grateful for that. What I'm requesting is us to be able to have at least 2 general councils a year, more than just the powwow, because there's a lot of us that can't make the powwow, especially from my own family, and yeah, or quarterly.
Thank you for those comments.
To follow up with his discussion, I would also like to point out, because I kind of like the way we have it set up a little bit with this whole process we're doing here in the greater picture, because we're having our general council, and then we are sitting our resolutions, the major resolutions, to an open election. And I think that's something we should probably think about considering for all general councils, especially if we start breaking up the general councils, because then we could end up with a situation where different families go to each general council and they just keep undermining each other.
Kind of related to the discussion, I've got somebody on Zoom kind of echoing that we need to bring our members together, but taking away benefits seems more like a punishment or gatekeeping it.
I think in this request, we're more looking for proposed solution, right? And we don't really want to shoot down somebody's proposed solution, but if you have another solution to the same issue, we'd be happy to hear that and entertain that also. But this isn't a forum to debate somebody else's proposed solution. And we are happy to hear all aspects of it. We're finishing up the additional items for future, what do we call this, in the future Constitutional Committee priorities. So we're finishing up this discussion, and then once this agenda item is over, we can hear a proposed amendment.
Hi, Chance Turley.
Hey, Chance.
Just on the logistics of having everyone involved, if we did have, let's say there's 5,700 people in the tribe and everyone shows up for powwow, where would we have it? This room, according to the fire marshal, can only hold 1,200 people. You're short 4,500 people. So where would we have powwow? Because I mean, what? Or general council, sorry. Where would we have general council, not powwow? Like, we couldn't have it here.
We'd have it at the grounds. Would have it at the powwow grounds.
Chance, I hear I I hear the concern, and from you also, Chris. I hear your concern also, and the unfairness in if that were imposed. But what we're looking for is really, I think, what Vice Chair is proposing is to explore options to bring this in. And we want, if you have better ideas, as we explore this, we want additional options on how do we make this more inclusive without setting people aside, right? Like, how do we do that? Are there other methods to this? She's only proposing one method, right? It might not be the know all end all or the solution that we're looking for, but if there is something else that you've got, we're happy to hear.
Incentives instead of punishments. What she's proposing is to punish people as opposed to get them here for a better reason. If you want to give someone something and say, hey, we'll give you this or that, and then you can come and take part, but to strip people's rights away, you don't have that right. I mean, we kind of discussed that yesterday. The only way you can remove people from the tribe is if they were added to the tribe erroneously. So what you're saying is let's leave them on the roll but take away all their benefits and essentially strip them of being a part of the tribe. And that's a punishment.
Yeah, I think that could be debated. You just said the word yourself, benefits, right? So I think that this is a part of the discussion that I'm talking about, that we've got to get to the table first to explore this more. But I do hear you. I do hear you. Right.
I think we're,
Yes.
Sandy Bratton, but I'm not going to stand. This means so much to me. No sympathy. I'm stage 5 kidney failure. I made arrangements to be here the last 2 days and last year. You have to want this. You don't have enough incentives to get me here. I could stay home and be happy and Zoom in. But I want to be here to show that I'm part of this. How do we get it? We all start brainstorming and make for sure that we can include everyone and make a lot of accommodations. But I'm here to support the business committee and the tribe. Let's pull together. Let's get more people here. I don't like that there's 65 people voting for my short future, my grandchildren, and my great-grandchildren. So let's get more people here. Let's get more ideas, more understanding, more involvement. And I hope to see you at the next one.
Thank you for those comments there. And thank you for your participation this weekend. Just so we're not devolving from the substance of Section B action items, which is future priorities for the Constitution Committee. And then also we have motions still left to reconsider. And I just want to make everybody mindful that there's still business that we need to take care of while everyone is still here, and we continue to lose those numbers. So I just want to put that out there. Michael?
Okay, so I've been listening to this conversation, and I know one of the big things that's demanded almost every year is per cap, and a lot of nations are per cap. And one of the problems right now with a lot of our current services is many people use them as life essentials. We're talking about like utilities and clothing for kids, school supplies, things people desperately need, and that taking them away will actually hurt the community. But when we're talking about a future benefit like such as per cap, that is just pure benefit. So it would be a positive reinforcement rather than a negative. So perhaps to consider, we should come up with some definition to separate those essential benefits from more just pure supportive or positive benefits like per cap we develop in the future, and then tie participation in general council and a general election to those non-essential benefits.
This is Callie Bowden. I just want to reiterate that I'm not trying to punish anybody. I am trying to find a solution to get participation. 1.7% is sad. It saddens me. And we all need to accept that truth. Right now, we don't have a per cap. Maybe we will in the future. And it would be very expensive right now to just start paying everybody for money that we don't have. So I am open for any kind of solution. I would rather everybody participate without us having to pay. The most participation we've ever had in this nation is when we were giving away TVs and $50 cash. If that's what we have to do again, then let's do it. But we need participation, and I'm just trying to find a solution. So no disrespect putting that out there. That's just my thought process behind it. So thank you.
I think something else to keep in mind too is these aren't approved. These are still going on a ballot, and these will still be sent out to all registered voters of the Quapaw Nation. So just putting that information out there. And debated in this forum too. And I think those are the next steps that I'd like for the Roman and them to talk about. How do we effectuate this?
Right, right. So this isn't a place to debate that. This is what's going to happen is we're going to take this committee is going to take this information, mull it over. Where can we be inclusive of these ideas? Where can, if some of these ideas aren't feasible or realistic, we want to get answers to those as to why. But we're here to listen to you and what you want to hear in these documents, and or what you would want to have in these documents going forward. So that's the goal of this part of our discussion, is to hear, it's like, well, what are those ideas? What do you want us to look at? And we'll look at them. We will. I mean, we spend hours, looking into and researching a lot of this stuff. So believe me, we'll look into it if you ask us to.
Give them your email.
constitution.committee@quapawnation.com. So if you want to give us any other ideas that comes up, 2:00 tomorrow, let me know.
I forgot why I originally came up here to talk about there now. With us being in a new generation and we're talking about remote participation, we should really look into how we want to manage and have legally remote voting in the future. So when we develop the technology, we already have that in place.
The Constitution Committee loves that idea, and we've been actually looking into it and seeing how that is, how feasible that is in the future, to not require presence so much as maybe a pin or something to vote. Whenever that technology gets here, we'd be more than happy to explore it.
Mr. Chair, if there's no other feedback, oh, yeah, there is.
Is it on? I always hesitate. I don't know if some of me says this is not the place to put this out there, but I don't know where else to do this. I think we need to know what we're asking people to be a part of. I'm not sure, and I'm not talking just about our tribe, because it's pervasive. We talk about getting people more involved, enrolling more members, and we grow bigger, and someone said that's a good thing. I'm not so sure it is. In my work, over the past 30 years. We're going to do more of this. Try to start working with the federally recognized tribal entities because of things that are coming down the pike through corporations and through the government that y'all are going to be seeing and that's going to be proposed to you. But we travel throughout this whole hemisphere and we talk to traditional people. I'm talking about traditional societies who who understand, and our people have this knowledge. It's just been buried for so long under computers, phones, gaming, Christianity, all the distractions out there. But when we talk to really traditional people in these traditional societies, they remind us that when we, at the core of what we still have together here is our powwow and our peyote people. And in those is that circle. There's a reason we do things in certain numbers. There's a reason why we go around. And it has to do with the earth that we all live on and share. We don't survive without her. She can survive. You can pull man out of the picture and the earth and everything else will still go on. But we don't survive without those things. So when we're asking people to come into this, I really would like to see somewhere reflected to give guidance to the future and to our people now, that we need to protect things like, it's not just the dance, it's not just the ritual, it's those things that we do those in order to maintain our earth, water, the air we breathe. That's all in danger. And they can talk all these false solutions that you all are going to be offered for money. Corporations are coming to tribes now from Alaska down into Brazil and offering them things like money if you will participate in things like these, I can't even think of them, Bitcoin, those kinds of things that takes thousands of computers to run that generate enormous, unbelievable amounts of heat. So they just proposed to a tribe up north, we'll pay you to take the heat from our facility, use it in your gardens, use it in your food projects. What you better look at is what those contracts don't say. If we keep enrolling people who have no connection to that knowledge, then we're not a distinct people anymore, and there's no reason for us to exist. There's no reason to talk about gaming or anything else. So I would just like, when you're doing this work, to keep those, and even if we don't have a lot of that left here, when you're doing this work, think about when we did have those things. They're still there. They're just so deep. Sometimes I don't know that they can even be pulled out. But they're not going to be in these younger ones who have, this is what leads them. So I would like to see some of that expressed somewhere in here to try to keep some of those values in place on this.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi, my name is Carrie Sisson, and I just had a question. I don't really know how to ask it, but as the last couple days we've been here, and I've sat and tried to think about, and I don't mean disrespect, how much money we have spent on attorneys to answer the questions that the business committee doesn't have the answers to. And so why, as a nation, can we not come up with a committee that is comprised of our elders that know this information? We could have our business committee is, not be, it's not a pride thing if you don't know an answer, but why do we have to pay for legal advice when a lot of the elders in this room have known answers to questions that have been brought up? It's just a question, and I, again, don't mean disrespect. I understand we have to pay attorneys, but it's a lot of money that maybe we wouldn't have to pay if we gave other people an opportunity to share their knowledge with us. It's just a suggestion.
Mr. Chair, without any other discussion or feedback on item B, I have no other business on the floor.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other items? Yes, Joe K. Hold on just a second, Joe K. Let's get you mic'd up so we can all hear.
Again, a review of, I believe it was Section 9 employees on the grievance committee. And I'd just like to say, while I have the floor, we've got at least 20 years experience of seeing how employees on the grievance committee, that's one reason we started paying the business committee, giving them salaries, because at one point, our previous administration controlled everything like an emperor by controlling our business committee. And I would like to see I would like to see employees not on the grievance committee. And I don't know, I kind of wonder too, when they are on the business committee, aside from being pressured by leadership, possible manipulation by leadership, I'm just wondering if the grievance committee has power to ask for employee records and other kind of documents. Does that not create some kind of conflict there, being an employee with access to other employees' personal information? I would just like not to deal with that.
Joe K., whenever this was first presented, number 9 this morning, were you a member of the no vote?
Yes, I voted no, but I didn't understand. I was not.
Okay, no, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure you're a member of the prevailing party. So the proper procedure now that you're identified as a member of the prevailing party, that you can motion to reconsider the vote taken on item 9.
Then I would like to make a motion to reconsider.
And that would require a second.
We have a second in the back from Kristen. Is that debatable? Okay. We can now move into discussion to include that language or that motion, and the discussion must be kept to the merits of the debate.
So what I just said?
Yes.
No, well, I had just gave thought to what I just said. Does that not create a conflict if I'm an employee sitting on the grievance committee, making a judgment or something of that degree anyway, on another employee? I don't know, something about that just does not sit right with me.
The grievance committee would not oversee anything on other employees. The grievance committee is specific to the business committee.
That's right. Okay, but with John, I'll just say, with John, when John was in power, in that seat of power, I think it's pretty well common knowledge that he ruled everything by putting pressure on the business committee. I just see the same potential for that kind of manipulation if employees sit on the grievance committee. If your income is tied, if someone has authority over whether, if they have firing power, then you could be manipulated to vote a way that maybe you wouldn't normally vote. And that's my main reasoning right there.
Any other discussion? In the back?
I think that this, Chance Turley, sorry, identify myself. I think this topic was discussed ad nauseum yesterday when there were more people present. So if everyone in this room is concerned with participation, I don't think we should open it back up for a vote when there are less people here today.
If we are allowed to open this one back up from yesterday, will we be able to open the ethics question back up as well? Which is number
Any motion?
14.
Any motions to reconsider?
Absolutely. That's what I need to do. I would make a motion
Well, we're still in discussion
Okay.
on a
So
motion
we'll
to
be able to.
reconsider.
I'd like to weigh in on the discussion on this, just on a personal level, as a tribal member. Like Chance had stated, I also think that it would be improper of us in a smaller setting to consider something that was already voted on by a larger number of people. Now that dynamic has changed, right? That if we were to reconsider this, I think that it should be reconsidered by the same number of people who voted on it to begin with and not a lesser number. I think that that really speaks to what we're trying to move away from with, you know, our history, and moving into this new phase of a Quapaw Nation is being more proper and fair about access, opportunity, participation, and that with those who have left, we are negating that participation that they were here for and present for. And in my opinion, I don't believe that this should be reconsidered.
I'd like to weigh in on the discussion. There's truth to what Roman said. However, it may be a long time before we get another chance to actually address this question. We've come a long ways in these last few days and meetings in strengthening the grievance committee. The grievance committee is the only check and balance you have on the business committee. And each of these people on the committee have the only jurisdiction over over those few people on the business committee. Imagine if your only jurisdiction you had was over your boss, who sometimes you respect, and outside of your wife or husband, probably about the only person that can tell you what to do. It's a little bit hard to overlook that. So what we've done here, if these amendments pass, we've not only, before, well, at the present time, if these amendments pass, we've made a lot of changes. Before it was, the grievance committee looked at the committee, and about the only thing they could do, they could either ignore it or you cut your head off. There wasn't much else. There wasn't any censure. There wasn't any options. We'll be changing that that it's not that severe, but it's been actually really 70 years probably since we made this many amendments to the governing resolution. It could be that many more years if these pass before it's seriously addressed again. And so we're looking at the future. Most of you got more future left than I do. But what we do here, if we pass these resolutions later, we've probably set the rules for generations to come. You know, since birth, little Quapaw children are taught that if they behave themselves, go to college and get an education, maybe someday they can be on the grievance committee. No, that's not the way it works. People get on the grievance committee by default, usually. They either want the $400 or they just kind of got in, voted on it they don't campaign for it. You just get people in here that you hope are just going to do the best they can do and be honest, imply the rules that's afforded them. And it has nothing to do with the quality of the employees or their sincerity or anything like that. It's just if employees are on the grievance committee, you've put good people in a position where pressure can be put on them, serious pressure. Now, I've been on this grievance committee for a while, but I've had a lot of experience with similar type committees. Pressure can be exerted on somebody in a lot of ways, and a lot of people that otherwise could maintain a certain level of individual preference can be manipulated to do things that they really don't want to do. It's just a bad situation, I think, to put employees on the grievance committee where their only jurisdiction is over their bosses. And it's just not a workable situation. I don't think you're ever going to get the true independence of the grievance committee to where it can function as it's intended to function until you don't have employees on the committee. There's just, it's just not working very well. I'm there, and I honestly believe that it could be better. So I'm in favor of revisiting this section and passing an amendment that precludes tribal employees from being on the grievance committee.
Thank you, Kogi.
Abigail here.
Hey, Abigail.
I've sat here these 2 days listening to all these laws and the way you all are speaking about one another. Are we not all alive, functioning adults that have hearts and minds? I say that because the way that you all are speaking on one another in these laws, you're stating that you don't trust anyone, that you have no faith in trusting people for who they are. You know them. You know what they're capable of. You know what they lack. But you still can't trust them. Sure, they're going to have faults. Sure, they're going to have mistakes. They're human. We're all designed that way. You're taking people's heart for their people and using laws that were written to take your rights away. Or, excuse me, y'all didn't know this, your ancestors' rights away. That's what these laws were written for. And you are using them in today's world against your own people because you have been educated and taught that your people, your kind, the ones who were raised, brought up with traditions just like you, are just like those same people you tried to not become. That your ancestors died fighting, trying not to become. I don't understand how all of you need someone to hold your hand to use the restroom. Because that's where you're getting at. This is the nitty-gritty. We're down to the basics. We're back to kindergarten. Don't eat the paste, guys. If you can't say nothing nice, don't say nothing at all. No. If you have something to say because you have a problem, you should have been voicing it at your business committee meetings. You should be outpouring what you see, what you do. If it's that big of an issue, make it an issue. Make your people see it is an issue. Don't continue to play high school games with your people. Joe Kay already told you. This woman right here already told you this could be her last time here. But she showed up because she cares. It's a part of her. It's who she is. And she wants it for her family, her grandkids. She wants to know her family will always be a part of who she was. These laws, these rules you need, you can't even be accountable for yourself, and you're trying to make other people accountable. Hold other people accountable. I don't understand how many of you have a brain in this room. You all have to be told repeatedly what not to do, what needs to be done. I don't understand that because I've been a mother since I was 17. I make sure my kids have everything they need before they went anywhere. If we showed up somewhere, they were fully prepared in case of an emergency. I'm listening to all of this and all the hardships that we had, and they're great ideas. But at the same time, I'm sitting here thinking, who wasn't brainstorming before you started this? Because it only took us a few minutes to come up with some of this. And these laws have been in place for how long? Y'all been riding on this governing resolution so that you can manipulate your people to hold control and power over them. Your people don't understand these things because nobody wants to take the time to educate them, to explain the laws and what is being written. And yes, you can say that you're doing that now. You can say that you're making it available to them now. But that is only meetings, special general counsel. You don't make those attorneys available to your tribal members on the regular. You can't foot that bill. You can't explain that to your people that you can't foot that bill. You can't even give the basics breakdown without some kind of secret conspiracy on all the businesses, all the actual money that comes into this nation. Y'all are not even thinking. You're too busy playing this high school game of he said, she said, he did this, she did this, my mama said that, your mama done this. That's what you're doing.
So just to be clear, are you arguing in the affirmative for this motion to reconsider?
I'm arguing.
Or are you against the motion?
I'm against it.
Okay.
I'm against it for the simple fact we have hardworking employees that are tribal members who have hearts with integrity that actually know what ethics, both personal and business, like, without having to have an attorney define those definitions for them. They know what they are. And they should not be feeling excluded or that they're untrustworthy because they're an employee by the tribe. And that right there excludes them. It makes them feel that way. It made me feel that way. And I'm just a tribal member. I don't work for the tribe. I have. You don't want me to go there. But as it is, seriously, y'all, you're living and breathing, but you don't know if today's your last day. And you're going to fight over who can control who instead of learning to control yourselves so that you can work together with one another for all of us? I'm confused. And I'm hurt. And I really think this is stupid.
So I think we've heard a lot of discussion. I don't think we're going to bring up any more points that's going to change our minds one way or the other. And I'd like to go ahead and put it to a vote now. So at this time, I'm going to call for it. Election.
So am I being silenced?
No, I'm calling for the vote, though. Like I said, I think we've heard
Well, I just
both
wanted
sides.
to speak. Nobody has spoke as an employee on this particular matter. And so I would like to be able to speak for the employees who's also a tribal member because we feel that we are being silenced because I have been an employee that has been retaliated against. I have been bullied. My husband was wrongfully terminated out of retaliation.
There's a lot of things that's happened to me personally. And that being said, you can ask anybody that works with me and anybody that knows me. I am ethical as the day is long. And being lumped into a group of people that are employees that are able to be intimidated and controlled is offensive to me, because I am not controlled like that. That is part of the retaliation that's came against me, is because I say no and I'm asked to do something I'm not supposed to do. That is why the enrollment committee loves me. The election committee respects me. I've never done anything I'm not supposed to do, and I've gotten in trouble for that. So as an employee, I think it's unfair to say that we can be intimidated. And if that's the case, then I don't think someone on the grievance committee should have a family member that's on the business committee. And that's just my personal opinion, because he could be intimidated just like we could as employees. That's what I had to say.
Okay. Thank you. Now I'll call for the vote. And just to clarify, this is a vote motion on the floor to reconsider Amendment 9.
Will someone please read Amendment 9? I will honestly say I can't see it from here, and
I can read it for you.
thank you, John.
By majority vote, shall the Quapaw Indian Council amend Section 6A of the governing resolution to provide: A, elections for the member of the grievance committee, unless a vacancy is being filled, shall take place at the Quapaw Indian Council meeting of the Quapaw Nation and shall be held by nominations and votes from the floor. 3 members will be elected in even number years, and 2 members will be elected in odd number years. And Chairman, just to clarify, a no would be a no to reconsider.
Yes, that's correct.
Yes is to reconsider, no to not reconsider, or abstain.
Yes.
Gonna go.
Thank you, Linda.
Let the voting begin, please.
By 61.5%, the motion to reconsider has failed for Amendment 9. Are there any other motions on the floor to reconsider any of the amendment proposals?
I would like to amend Article 14 to allow employees to be on the ethical committee. Can I get a second?
Hey, Chance, one second, buddy. The motion must be made by somebody who voted yes.
No. I don't think that was an amendment.
I did. I misunderstood and voted yes.
Okay. Now, he wants the motion to reconsider 14. That doesn't work. Okay, Chance, where you at? The proper motion would be that you motion to reconsider Amendment 14.
I motion to reconsider Amendment 14. Chance Turley, 2915.
We have a second.
So we have a motion to reconsider Amendment 14, and then we have a second. Now we'll move into discussion.
I made the motion because for the same reason I feel on the grievance committee, I feel that when you employ a tribal member, you don't have the right to silence their voice. And they should be able to stand up to you and speak truth to power.
Michael Whitecrow here. This is going to sound very contradicting, but as many know, I am very passionate when it comes to worker rights in general. And it pains me to disagree with this motion. I made a statement on Facebook, and I am going to be forwarding it to the Constitution Committee to consider for future amendments. And I do agree that it is wrong to deny members a voice on this committee. However, the foundational argument I have for that is based on an assumption of integrity and on a respect of law and a trust of it in our resolutions. By doing this in this current situation and taking this action, we would be undermining the integrity of our body, which would be going against the spirit that I believe in. I think it will be better to vote no on this action and to consider something like I recommended and that is to make additions to that for a voice for the people and respect the decision of this body already.
So just so you're clear, the way that you would do that is to vote yes. That way the motion to reconsider passes, and then it nullifies, it cancels out the original vote that we took. It would go into discussion, and then there you would make your proposal in which you're talking about sending to the Constitution Committee. Just so we're clear.
I understand, and that's why I'm saying it pains me, because there's two principles there I am in conflict with. And I know it's harder to do the one I'm suggesting, and that is to vote no here and then create a new amendment in the future to make the change.
Michael, this is just my portion of the discussion. I'm not the chair of the committee right now. That I echo that sentiment 100%, and I wish that we had more of that, of what you're saying. That in my opinion, of the previous request to look at or to reconsider the earlier motion was based on this body is a different body right now in this minute than it was from the people who took the vote to begin with, and out of respect to that vote and those people who are no longer here, or I think that this is, in my opinion, improper for us to try to change that without the same number of people being present that took the initial vote. But I too agree that, I think that there's more discussion to be had, but I don't think that this is the proper time.
I don't know if I'm supposed to respond, but my motion still stands.
Yes, your motion is still being discussed, yeah.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, I'm going to call for the vote on this motion to reconsider, including, or I guess, is it including or excluding? Motion to reconsider the language to Section 14 or Amendment 14. So I'm going to call for the vote now. Turn it over to the election committee. You need clarity? That'd be nice, huh? So there was a motion on the floor to reconsider the part about employees serving on the ethics commission.
So yes, it will be reconsidered, no, not reconsidered, and abstain.
That's correct.
Begin voting, please. Voting has stopped.
Okay, by a vote of 34.2% yes, 60.5% no, and 5.3% abstain, the motion to reconsider fails. Are there any other motions to reconsider? Gracie?
One on the process from here.
Okay.
Okay. Mr. Chair, in accordance with our governing resolution, section 14, which authorizes the business committee to compel the chairman to call a special election, I move to request a resolution and vote by the business committee to call a special election for the approved amendments that this body has voted on.
Thank you, Roman. As chairman of the business committee, I'll accept that, and that action item will be placed on the next monthly business committee meeting in February.
Will you join me in prayer?
Hold on. Before we go to prayer, I think we have adjournment first. So, you want to make a motion? Motion to adjourn? You would?
I make a motion that we adjourn.
Okay. A second by Candace. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Any abstention? Motion carries and we are adjourned. Now, Gracie, could you please close us out in prayer?
Gay. Join me in prayer as we close this meeting. In Tate, Gay, we're glad that you were with us. We were glad that people had a chance to speak, and we did take care of business, which is what we were about today. Father, we do ask that you be with us as the committees do their work and try to get some of these things in order so we can go on to the next step. Father, we do ask that you be with all of us because there are perhaps some feelings that are difficult, but we ask that you be with us. And so we can be together as one another, to care for one another, to respect one another, as we should be, because we're a family. And Father, we ask now that you be with all of us as we go to our various destinations, whether it's at home or whatever. The weather is very, very cold out there, so certainly as we're traveling, we would pray for safe travels for everyone, that they have a safe journey home. And bring us back together at another point, another part of what we are about. But Father, we are just thankful to you for all that you have done for us and are doing for us and will in the future. And that's what we have to look forward to. So again, Gay, thank you. Amen.
Thank you, Gracie. Gay.